Welcome back to BioNTX Presents Inside Innovation, the podcast where we sit down with leaders, builders, and thinkers shaping the future of life sciences, healthcare, and biotechnology across Texas and beyond. This series is part of our broader commitment to elevate the companies and partners driving our ecosystem forward. And today I am so very excited to welcome one of our newest and most strategically aligned partners, the North Group, our official security and risk intelligence partner, bringing world-class expertise in biosecurity, cyber risk, crisis mitigation, and operational continuity, capabilities that are becoming essential as innovation and national security converge. We are joined by Steve Hernandez, CEO of the North Group, and Nate Von Uhl, Embedded CSO. Both are military veterans, seasoned leaders, and nationally recognized experts in high-risk, high-stakes security environments. Gentlemen, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much,
Nate,
Eric.
good to see you, man.
Pleasure to
Good
meet you.
Good to see you, Eric.
Steve, always a pleasure, man. It's been a while since IC3, huh?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah. Well, we're gonna jump right in, and Steve, we're gonna start with you. All right.
Okay.
And this is just to kind of get our audience an understanding of who you are, a little bit about your history, so on and so forth. So, Steve, for our listeners who may not know the full scope of TNG, can you share the mission of the North Group and what sets the organization apart in the world of security and risk intelligence?
Absolutely. So our mission is to provide holistic security management. So we do that in a few different ways. We focus on liability and liability reduction primarily, but also making the world a better place is a big part of our mission. So with the ecosystems and the customers which we come into or we serve, we're focused on using our expertise to make the world, their world, and everything around that a safer environment for all.
So it's more than just business. It sounds like it's personal for you as well.
Absolutely. So we founded the company in 2017, and we've grown it significantly over the years. But the focus has always been to make the world a better place,
Yes.
right? Help veterans, and we have some philanthropic endeavors we're involved in as well. And one of the things we're very focused on is looking at what liability faces organizations and what trends we're not seeing and the industry isn't seeing, and being able to help recognize those. A lot like biosecurity.
like we'll get into that meat a little bit later on. Nate, to you, your role as embedded CSO within a hospital system is very unique, or at least unique to me. Can you walk us through your background, military, operational security, and now your leadership role at the North Group?
Yes. So I started out in the military, became a Navy SEAL, did a stint in active duty, and then retired in the reserves. Got into law enforcement. That was kind of my day job for quite a few years down in Southern California. And then went on to the private industry where I met Steve in security. I had a stint in executive protection and working with basically the government contracting space. Once again, training folks overseas through some of our SOCOM commands. And so it was very interesting. And then once I met Steve, he brought me to, he had a problem set at a hospital that was referred to us by a friend of ours, to say the least. So, and then I was supposed to go up there for about 3 days, and it's been about 4.5 years. And so it was an interesting opportunity. So what we ended up doing there is there was a pretty big threat on the hospital at that point, to where we started to mitigate that threat through building relationships with local law enforcement, building relationships with the security team that we had on the ground there. And then coming up with different models to mitigate what was happening. And what was happening behind the scenes and what was happening in front of us was kind of a difficult, I guess, concept to grasp, because everybody was a victim in that, according to what we've seen, what we've found, which is unfortunate. So we mitigated to where no one got hurt, everybody kind of won. And then the hospital was a more secure place. After that, we're getting ready to pack up, and they're like, you can't leave. So we want you to help revamp the security program here.
They lock the doors and
They exactly lock the doors. They're like, you cannot leave.
yes.
So, that was a very, very, opening moment, because now you're thrown into a culture where at a hospital setting, that's the best days of your life will be in a hospital, and the worst days in your life will be in a hospital. So the emotions are running high, and there's a certain culture that you want, kind of a Disney type of atmosphere, to when you walk in there, you want people to be as happy and as open and as free as possible in a hospital. So for me, security in the past, I could lock down anything, make sure nothing comes in. But now it's kind of how do you do this in this kind of open environment? And then started coming up with security models of security in the shadows, right? So we started layering security to where people really didn't see the security.
Yes.
It was there. We had teeth when we needed them on an instant, and do have teeth, when we need them on an instant. However, they're not known to most, right? Working with local law enforcement is key. So we built a very good relationship with local law enforcement, to the point to where they're at the hospital 24/7 anyway. I mean, there is never not a police car, a sheriff's vehicle at the hospital on something. So usually even the criminal element will 100% at some point probably end up at the hospital, whether it was self-inflicted, so it is really kind of this problem set that a lot of people don't understand. The workplace violence in hospitals and the criminal element is there. And so to work with local law enforcement is key. So we've at this point, we go out to dinners. We have barbecues, with our local law enforcement
So you're
folks.
truly embedded.
We are truly embedded, and we're partners. And when I say that we're partners, it isn't, hey, we need this, we need that. We call them up first name basis, to where if we need something on either side, we're both protecting our community. Mm-hmm. And that's what's key. As far as the embedded chief security officer, now it was, okay, how do I layer these security problems with preserving culture and making this security in the shadows as much as humanly possible? And that's been, so we've had a humongous technology shift. And technology is key, and we'll talk about that, I'm sure, a little bit later.
Yes.
But that is how, and every hospital is different, every culture is different, but that has been a humongous success, I think, of what we've created at this hospital network.
Awesome. Well, thank you for sharing that. And I think it speaks to, Steve, your vision as a founder and the model that you've created. So Nate, thank you for sharing that. The one thing I look forward to in this podcast was new terminology, right? You guys being military guys, teeth in an instant. I'm going to use that. I'm going to use it. Don't bring out these teeth in an instant, right? I'm sure there'll be many more. So I'm going to come to you on this one, Steve. And now we're going to transition under the heading Biosecurity as National Security. I said a little bit about that in my opening. You were so outstanding at the IT3 conference talking about this. You shared the stage with John Crowley, CEO of Bio, and moderator Milton De La Paz, the Vice President of Airline Relations and Cargo Business Development at DFW International Airport, served as your moderator. And that really struck a chord, not only with the audience that was there, but in the subsequent weeks, a lot of people are still talking about that segment. So from your vantage point, why has biosecurity moved from a niche discipline to a national priority?
I think adversarial targeting is probably the number one consideration. We're on the cusp of, generational AI advancement, technology advancement. We're going into what I'm going to call the AI boom. We had the dot-com boom 20 plus years ago, and now we're going to have the AI boom. Mm-hmm. And I think the enhancement of that is also going to be adversarially focused. And I think that's going to cross-reference to energy security. It's going to cross-reference over to healthcare security, but it's also going to cross over to biosecurity as well. And I think where we're going to see our largest concerning point is going to be the convergence between physical and cyber, and systems that are hooked up to labs and hospitals and healthcare networks and systems like that. We're also seeing the rise, as Nate mentioned, we're seeing that rise of targeted violence. I think that's another piece to this, because if an organization is involved in anything controversial, communities, organizations, individuals have a voice like they've never had before.
Yes.
Disinformation's a major concern, where a company can be targeted based on what somebody says on social media, and then all of a sudden that threat level goes from, let's say, 1 to 10 overnight. And so I think looking at it, and then the protected instances of the substance or the systems or the processes, the formulas, the creation in these biolabs, I'm just going to go on a limb and say that adversarially, I don't always need to target my enemy. I can use what my enemy has internally to target themselves. And I just think that that's a concern, right? And I got to go back to the days of anthrax and things like that. Talk about the Wuhan lab in China. I mean, there's a million different instances we can give here. But number one is there are adversaries that are actively looking to exploit, target, or understand the vulnerabilities of the bio industry.
Wow. Yeah, I get it. I mean, and for the audience, if you weren't at IC3, this was a taste of what was shared in that session, and you can see why it was so intriguing and informative for the audience. But let me keep that thought going, Steve, and then I'll come to you, Nate. And so, based on what you said, why should a mid-size biotech company in Texas care?
So I think everybody should do a risk assessment. A risk assessment is fairly inexpensive, depending on which company you go with. But understanding your risk is the first step to managing your risk. And we talk about management of the risk. We're talking about physical, cyber. We're talking about everything. Employment risk, due diligence, vetting, all of these things that go into the kind of the security umbrella,
Yes.
right? And it touches multiple, business verticals. It touches HR, it touches finance, it touches the executive C-suite, it could touch operations. I think number one is to understand what my risk is and then say, okay, there's nothing significant to report here. I'm good to go. But risk liability convergence is going to be based on, have I assessed or did I ignore? Or did I fail to assess? And if you look at that from the standpoint of how somebody becomes liable, what we see often is a lot of organizations' liability is raised through the lack of, I want to say bury their head in the sand, but not do the assessment needed.
Yes.
I believe that if you have employees, that's a duty of care issue. If you have a threat, how do you deal with a terminated employee? How do you deal with someone that has had access to IP that could be dangerous or otherwise used in an adversarial way? How do you mitigate somebody who may have a gambling problem, who wants to sell some information, right? IP theft is the third largest corporate issue in America, right?
Wow. Yeah.
And,
I read that.
And it used to be workplace violence, and that moved up to, fighting for number one to number two there. I do think that people need to care, because at the end of the day, if you're trying to change the world with life science, bio-life science in your organization, you do not want to hinder that mission by a brief security blip that turns into a major critical incident.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that. Some of the feedback we got from a lot of our members, and our membership goes from early stage, small to mid-size to large. And so some of the feedback we got was to that point, we're a small company. Why should we be concerned about that? And so thank you for bringing color to that dynamic. And so, Nate, let me come over to you. Again, with size being a part of what we're talking about, for organizations that may say, we're too small to be a target, and Steve touched on it a little bit, what would you say to challenge that assumption, piggybacking on what Steve just shared?
I would say you've started a business, right? You've started a business. What makes you significant in that business? And usually it's very significant for them to be able to start that up, to get funding for that, to get it off the ground. And so now what a lot of folks do, especially when they're looking for, capital coming in to grow their company, their business, and there's different facets of that depending on the industry that they're in. A lot of times they forget the security piece of that, especially in bioengineering, biotech. You're looking at something probably that's coming out either that's making something new or something better.
Yes.
And the reason you're a business is because you're making something new or something better. If you don't protect that, it's not going to be long before somebody else, possibly either domestically, overseas, is doing the exact same thing that you're doing now.
True.
But they have quicker resources, more capital. I mean, capitalism is just that, right? Some of our adversaries, foreign adversaries, don't have the issues of, all right, how am I going to get grant funding? How am I going to, am I going private equity with this? Am I going venture capital with this? Next thing you know, weeks turn into months, months turn into years. And if you're not protecting what you're trying to do here, and somebody else gets a hold of it, they're going to develop that at a very faster rate than we could ever do here.
Yes, yes.
And so that's why it's important to know what you have, protect it, invest in that. And I think I think it would be more of a value added to investors to say, we have got this locked down, because if I'm investing money and somebody else has already got this IP, and they're getting to they're winning the race.
That's a great point. Steve, you want to add something to that?
Yeah, I'll piggyback.
And real quick, I used to work in finance. I always call it the isms of capital.
Absolutely.
But Steve, you want to add something
and to piggyback on both of you right there is stakeholder liability mitigation.
Yeah.
Right? An investor is still a stakeholder of that. Right? An investor, in my opinion, depending on what industry you're in and the knowledge of that investor, but if you get a well-seasoned investor, they're going to understand what we do from a corporate security standpoint, because they've come across it. Most of the investors that I encounter, private equity groups, venture capital groups, what I hear is security is not a constant thought, but it is a consideration to secure the investment. Venture capital doesn't necessarily care about the safety of the people inside the 200 companies that they have invested in, but what they care about is that investment secure. And it's a lot of times like, if an organization's liability is growing, that will hit the capital market of that organization at some point. It will hit and benchmark whether they can grow or whether they're at risk of financial damage, right? IP loss. IP loss will tank a company in early stage and mid stage.
We know.
Right?
Yeah.
So, and I can, crazy stories about IP targeting, I go on for days. And what I have seen is those foreign adversaries want that IP because they don't have an original thought left in them.
Yeah.
And they want what the smart and intelligent people of industries and first movers advantages are creating and making. Best thing to do is to steal it.
Yeah, unfortunately.
And it will tank financial investment. It will tank credibility. I think cause greater risk than even that on the national security side.
Yeah, we call it the undercut. That's what we call it. I watch F1 racing, right? It's the undercut, right? Okay, so great section, guys, and thank you for sharing that. As you're talking, I'm hearing conversations that we've had with members and conversations that I've had with various companies and founders at the coffee table and all of these things. So you're answering questions that I'm confident that will be valuable to our audience. So with that, we're going to transition to another segment. The North Group's approach to intelligence, prevention, and embedded leadership. Nate, you touched a little bit on it in your opening, but I'm going to come to you, Steve, real quick to kind of kick this off, and then we'll go from there. You're known, TNG is known for its intelligence-driven operating model. What does that mean in practical terms for your clients? Again, you're known for your intelligence-driven operating model. What does that mean?
Be first and be right, simply put. More complexly, our tagline is security refined by intelligence. And what that means for us is whether we're doing executive protection, site security, risk assessments, protective intelligence, crisis management, we're doing it from a position of being informed, because truly the word intelligence means information at the end of the day, right? So, and information is data. So what we're doing is we're approaching a security situation not in a benign function, but as holistic, data-informed professionals. Not every security situation, no security situation is one and the same. And this has been a kind of a market shift for us. We wanted to set ourselves apart from, the competitor market, and we wanted to be more holistic. We wanted that boutique approach. At scale, of course, but we wanted that boutique approach to be able to truly manage problem sets. What we didn't want was customers that just wanted us to show up and put a guy in a jacket and watch this door. No. What we want is problem sets where we can go in and actually, going back to the values and principles, make the world a better place based on that customer's ecosystem and their operations. I will say that intelligence-driven approaches, they vary, right? Because it depends on, if we're overseas, that intelligence model is much different. If we're operating in North America, that model is pretty standard for us, and we have that down pat. We will change things as we go into different operating environments.
Yes.
And that's truly what intelligence is all about, is being malleable, being
as Bruce Lee says, be like water.
Yes. Absolutely. Yes.
Be like water.
And part of our concern when we come at a new client problem or a current client problem is always looking at what we might have missed.
Yes.
Right? So everybody has a plan till they get punched in the mouth. One of the greatest fighters in the world said that. Right? So
Mikey T.
Yep. Right. So I do think that, the best boxer in the world watches their opponent's footwork.
Yes.
Not just their hands. Right? So at the end of the day, what we're doing is we're corner-menning each other when we're going into the ring, dealing with a customer problem set, but we're also looking at who's in the crowd, and this is the best analogy I can give.
Oh, fine.
And on top of that, what's the venue we're fighting in? Because that will dictate a lot of our intelligence analysis. So we have a really good protective intelligence division, and our analysts are fully focused on mitigating risk by understanding the data and the problem sets that our customers are facing. So for healthcare specifically, we've seen a rise in targeted violence on the C-suite, executive staff, management of a healthcare institution, organization. So what does that mean? We are hunting for those threats now. And we are using different pieces of data, say stock price shortage, right? I'm a financial inquisition in the media. The other thing we're doing with that is we're watching the information sharing components of public perspective, right? To say, is there a threat here? So I want you to think about it like this. Data drives the result of the security performance of an organization.
Yes.
Nothing else.
Yeah.
And that's the best way I can put it.
Which is the perfect, which is, again, when we first started this relationship, I think you got a certain sense of excitement for having you in the ecosystem, because the way you approach problems and problem solving parallels to the scientific approach as well. It's data driven, right? It's all of those things. And so we're in a perfect space for your model because it's familiar to a degree to what our scientists are doing here. We just have to highlight how it impacts their business model versus the scientific. There's parallels in the scientific approach, but how does that now impact you as a business beyond the science? So, Nate, did you want to add anything to what Steve said?
I would say, act like you're fighting yourself in the security industry, especially when it's here. And that was kind of ingrained in me in the military as a very young lad, if you will. And so you look at it from a different angle on how would I try to get IP from here? How would folks of ours, and this is kind of going into like the red teaming pieces to where let's see your vulnerabilities, right?
Yes.
And the vulnerabilities may be a human being. And when I say that, the IP might be right here rather than in everything around us.
Yes.
To where that's dangerous. That's very dangerous. Now, how do we protect that, right? And so I think it's figuring out where the vulnerabilities actually lie, and then that's where we start. And so a lot of security companies, they'll come in and they've got their protocols, and just like Steve was saying, they'll put a human being in here with a jacket on, and then everybody's like, you know what, this is great. It's not. As a matter of fact, it's a false sense of security, most likely, to where that's not what people are looking for. That's not what the bad people are looking for. And so I think it's just making folks understand that, talking to a C-suite in any organization and saying, you know what, let's do a quick Q&A, a discovery on where does the assets actually lie in your company. And a lot of times they don't realize where that is. And so we will help expose that and then protect it.
Awesome. So I want to park that, and then I want to go back to the CSO model. Right,
Yes.
right. Let me go back to that just for a moment. So as we process what you just shared and your value proposition relative to our space, what is the fundamental difference between having a traditional security vendor, right? And I'm putting up air quotes, versus having the embedded security leader at the C-suite level?
I think it's innovation. And when I say that, when you look at other organizations that have had a CSO, and no, a lot of them are great. A lot of them are great. A lot of them get complacent to where this is what we've done. This is what we've done all the time for years, and it's worked. The problem with that is the enemy, the adversarial, piece to this is they're always developing. So if you're not keeping up with that, you're either A, you're getting lucky, or B, you have something that they don't want. And so to keep up with that, I think that embedded model, you get fresh blood in there. You get fresh ideas. And so even as a CSO to a hospital network, and Steve and everybody will tell you, I mean, I travel quite a bit, meet new groups of people that have edge technology so that I can continue to take what we've got and expand it. I will never be happy with what we have.
Yes.
And everybody that has ever worked for me understands that.
I've never met a leader who's happy being stagnant.
They're out there, Eric. They're out there, and literally, it's like the stapler guy in the office space. You know,
I'll say a true leader.
100%. And so, but you have to recognize when it does start to stagnate.
Yes.
And now, how do I get new blood in there? And so, and the great thing about an embedded, an embedded role, they come with their own assets. So it takes a lot of drain on a corporation to where it is a fire and forget in that piece of the organization, to where, yes, we will brief you on everything that we're doing. We will continue to do a discovery, and we will tell you everything that we are doing to make this place a safer environment. And so now it's a brief versus a what are we doing day in and day out for security. And the thing that keeps us up every night, all night long, is if somebody was coming to work in fear, right?
Yes.
That is what keeps us up at night.
Yes.
And so that is what we mitigate. That's what we stop, to where that will never happen on our watch. And that's very, very important. And we will build the model to make that happen.
Duly noted, and that's the value, not only the value proposition, but one of the things I always talk about, and I love on this show, is I have a chance to interview and be in the room with people who are living in their purpose. And yes, we're talking about all these technical and security types of things, but I'm truly with two gentlemen who are living in their purpose, and so it's an honor to share this with you. Steve, let me come to you on this real quick, and this is really a shout out to many of our members here in the North Texas area. As you know, we've got a lot of hospital systems here in the market. We've got a lot of growing biotech companies in our market. And so this is an opportunity to really kind of speak to them directly in a sense. So if you're one of those companies or one of those organizations, what are early indicators that signal that you may need a more strategic approach relative to your leadership and how you're approaching security, even if they don't recognize it yet?
Does your risk outweigh your budget? Or does your budget outweigh your risk? Right? Those are two, and those mean two different things. I also think that organizations in early identification stages will see increases violence on staff, right, especially in the healthcare network side, but growth. Growth often indicates risk is growing. You never see, if you look at a Gantt chart, you never see business growth and risk go down, right? You always see it go up. So I think it's really important to identify that we're growing. Our security needs to grow with us. I think that's number one. If you're a major medical institution, network, I think there's a lot of great people out there in healthcare security. I think that a lot of those great people, unfortunately, are not transitioning with the generational changes that are occurring within security and healthcare, right? Meaning the large number of mental health issues we have, right? Budgets have always dictated security departments, and security has always been one of the first things cut in a budget crisis. So post-COVID, we saw a lot of budget crises in healthcare, right? There was a lot of money being spent. There was a lot of money being withheld. There were governmental issues with networks receiving funding, different things. So what I will say is, if you're in the business of caring for the patients that you service, your staff should be focused on providing that care. If your clinical staff, executive staff, C-suite, emergency department staff are largely focusing on their own security, you have a major critical issue that's just, it's a ticking time bomb, because the organization has a level duty of care to comply with providing a safe environment for those people to provide their care to the patients. Ultimately, I think if the organization is facing multiple security incidents, let's say, and I'll give you kind of two examples, and I can let Nate touch on some of this too.
Yes.
We recently, at one of our client locations, we stopped an active shooter with our model, flat out. And when we had gotten the call, it was pretty surreal, because it's kind of what we've discussed for years, is we want to mitigate this instance.
Yes.
And it was a total of 14 minutes from start to finish, right? And when we wrote up kind of the analysis of it and did the after action of it, what we found is that the program that we instituted didn't need extensive management for the interdiction of that threat. But if I look at every instance of violence, targeted or untargeted, at a healthcare network, what I see is social engineering applications are applied, right? Somebody makes entry into that building, act like they belong there, and they are there for a reason. Say if they're in the emergency department. The other thing that we see quite a bit is organizations are facing increased negative publicity.
Yes.
Whether it's patient care, patient advocacy issues, whatever. And a lot of times organizations want to remain silent or non-communicative with that, or they want to create a false narrative. So we've done a lot of crisis comms work in this place, where we bring in people to work with our crisis management teams, because everything you say outbound could have a security repercussion inbound.
Yeah.
Right? And so it's a very delicate situation. And I think that if you're facing a critical incident, whether it's death on-prem, whether it's allegations of sexual assault, we've had a number of instances over the last several years of doctors assaulting children, right? We had Dr. Larry Nassar up in Michigan, right, at I believe MSU, right, was convicted. I mean, you're a father and you're hearing that, you're going to blame that medical institution, right? And now this is what I call threat convergence is starting to multiply. So the next piece to this is apply some protective intelligence.
Yes.
Right. Most healthcare organizations, they're 20 years behind the corporate industry when it comes to threat intelligence, executive protection. They're putting people in places, but not systems. And that's where we really stress ourselves, is we want our security programs to outlive our positions within. We really want to create that environment. And the last thing I'll say is, when we look at kind of the early warning indicators or behavioral threat modeling that we do, we're looking for not only people but groups, but we're also looking for the political environment, because recently we've seen a political environment drive a narrative to target the CEO of a healthcare network.
Wow.
And increasingly put her at further risk, or him. And it's across the board, and we've seen it almost nationally based on disinformation being applied through the media or social media outlets,
Yes. Wow.
and then increasing that risk to where that executive might as well say, I'm done.
Wow.
And then the last thing is you see a lot of threats come from organizations around or within an organization for political or dynamic control. And I think that's another consideration, where if an organization is facing violent rhetoric, increased threats, increased violence on staff, if their patient to staff ratio of violence is higher than 10 a month, then you need some consultancy and you need to look at that. You need some assessing. Just my piece.
Absolutely.
Nate, you want to add anything to that before we transition to the next section?
I think and just one last thing, is when we get a phone call is when there's some sort of catastrophic event or a catastrophe is about to happen, right? And that's going back to the earlier question of when should earlier companies start looking at security?
Yes.
If you've got security growing with you, and when I say this, when Steve brought up the comms, even the comms piece, before comms is released, we have a different way of thinking what communications are going out to mass, employees. We've got a different way of thinking to say, there's a security risk here. Let's take out this, and let's add more of this, to where we're embedded in everything, not just a person in a jacket with a radio. We're embedded in everything. We are going to reduce risk, and so I think it's very important to where what is a human life worth in your organization. I mean, in the healthcare industry, all of this right here is to save lives.
Yes.
If you overlook security issues and risk, there might be lives that are taken under your watch in your own building, and it's happening every day. We're seeing it more and more. It's almost every month, maybe every other week in the news in just the healthcare industry of somebody getting shot in a hospital. So I think that's very, very, very important to grow together.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that. It's a lot to think about. That 14 minutes, I can only imagine the stress in that situation with an active shooter, and that's why I'm grateful that you gentlemen and your organization do what you do.
One thing I'll add here, Eric, is we've had a couple shootings on prem with a client, and what we've learned is there is an offensive strategy to security that is not applied. I heard it recently from an individual who's a security director, and he said, guy called, threatened to shoot up our clinic. I called him as a security director. And that's like such an unheard concept in the private sector, but it isn't in law enforcement.
Yeah.
Right? Because at the end of the day, as deputies or officers, you're going to pick up the phone and say, hey, buddy, why are you calling to threaten to kill the CEO?
Yeah.
Like, you can't do that. But what that isn't a call to threaten or warn. That's a call to understand.
Yes.
Right.
And that's the analysis that has to be applied, because I'm telling you, threat convergence moves. We have a cycle we look at, and it's called the pathway to violence. And when somebody moves down the pathway to violence, there's different steps to that. And when they move down it, they go from planning to breach very quickly.
Yes.
It's the fastest moving phase of the cycle. So at the end of the day, if you're seeing that planning or intent, and the way we look at this is, does the individual, subject, or group have means, placement, capacity to act? If you can answer those questions honestly, or you have that feeling right here in the pit of your chest, or the hair in the back of your neck stands up when you get out of your car in your parking lot, call a professional.
Yeah.
Right? If your people don't want to come to work at 2 a.m. for a shift change, If your doctors are afraid to go to the parking garage, that's kind of my early warning detection, right? At the end of the day.
This is good. This is good, guys. And let me share this before we go to the next section. For our audience, this is the beginning conversation. We started at IC3. We're going to have this podcast, but we're working on marketing and communication strategies for 2026 to where a lot of this information that we're sharing today will be made available to our audiences, as well as the opportunity to reach back out to Steve and his team at the North Group. So this is just a taste of the insight, the knowledge, and the experience of the North Group as we prepare for 2026. So let me shift real quick strategically, Steve, to you as an organization. And again, as I mentioned earlier, we're so proud to have you as the official security and risk intelligence partner of BioNTX Texas. Tell us what being in the market, tell us what penetrating the market of Texas, if you will, or having your brand and your capabilities in the state of Texas, what does that mean for you as a company as you continue to grow and expand your services?
Well, I think that the state of Texas itself is very security friendly. And I think they've got, the Texas Security Board and Texas DPS. The state understands it, right? The state understands security. So we deal with a lot of compliance issues at state level nationally. I do love the fact of reaching this market, being in this market for the simple fact of the state gets it, and the professionals and the politicians in the state understand it.
Yes.
The executives in the state get it. You're rich in oil and gas industry here, right? You have a ton of healthcare here. Mm-hmm. You have a lot of supply chain, logistics, manufacturing. I just think that this is a great environment, right? I think that people understand it here more than other places that we operate. And I think security-minded strategies are discussed here quite a bit. And we just like you, Eric.
Well,
let's put that on repeat. No, I'm kidding. But Nate, I know you want to jump in there, but let me add just the layer to this. We are actively, as BioNTX Texas and as a state, looking to recruit more pharma companies to come to Texas, especially manufacturing companies for all the right reasons, jobs. AstraZeneca has a big plant here, and we're hoping that 2026 brings more companies here. So what you just said, I think, is very critical as companies are evaluating markets that they want to grow in or have headquarters or manufacturing presence in. So you sharing that really brings it full circle on why we're excited to be Texas, but also bring other companies to Texas. So Nate, you want to add something to that?
Absolutely. This is an absolute international hub as well. You got the Port of Houston. I mean, this is the
DFW. Yeah, Milton was from DFW, moderated the panel. Yeah,
all the infrastructure that anybody would need and the land. Texas is not very small.
Yes.
And so when I say that, you've got everything you need here. Everything. The weather's not bad. You've got the oceans, the rail. You've got air. You've got everything here. There's no reason why anybody wouldn't want to start up a company here.
And we've got great tax incentives.
Yes, you do. Yes, you do.
And our own stock market.
100%. 100%.
A lot of great things. So this is fun, guys. Thank you so much. We're going to shift to another segment here as we get close to wrapping. But I mentioned it earlier. And so I want to talk a little bit about leadership, military experience. And you've touched on it, Steve, a couple of times. And I knew this before you even touched on it, that you're a very mission-driven leader. So to both of you, and we'll start with you on this one, Steve, you both bring a deep military background to who you are today. How does that shape your approach to crisis management and operational discipline?
I mean, for me, it's mission first, right? We have to move through the noise and focus on the mission. You said something earlier, and when we analyze things or we look at indicators, and this is a very big thing for me that I took militarily, is second and third order effects. Mm-hmm. Right? As I'm moving through a problem set, I'm analyzing, even in what we do as a solution, what are the second and third order effects of that? Mm-hmm. And that's one of the greatest, kind of strategies I've seen militarily is constantly analyzing that from a leadership standpoint, because I don't want to put my people in harm's way. I don't want to, and that could even mean our clients, right? I don't want to put people in our ecosystem in harm's way. So our decisions that we make, whether it's go left, go right, could do that if we don't analyze those second and third order effects. And the other thing I'll say that's really important, both from a business standpoint and even a military leadership standpoint, is just recognizing that failure is the breeding ground of success. But when you recognize failure early on, you mitigate risk in a much larger way, right? So knowing that maybe this isn't the right strategy that the client has done or that we have done, and recognizing that we need to pivot and shift, it's that blind spot recognition. That's largely where a lot of times the lack of humility or what have you will get in the way of that. And there is none of that, because honestly, our business can change somebody's life. It can change, our customers' financials, right? And it can put people at risk. So we need to analyze those things for me. The other thing I took away is just make the world a better place. And that isn't just a tagline or a phrase. It's be in service of others. And I think that's the greatest value I took that I try to apply from a leadership standpoint, is I want to be in service of others.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. I always tell people my leadership style is servant leader. It's servant first, and the gravy on top is whatever leadership dynamics come from that. So, Nate, to you, same question. Obviously, deep military background. How does that shape your approach to what you're doing now, what you're currently doing?
I think the biggest thing in the SEAL teams, and I'm not one of those Navy SEAL I love my other soft brothers, the Green Berets out there, the BJs, the whole nine, all love.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you, the one thing, the culture that we had, and this is from the boys at the end of the day, is anybody could innovate, right? If it was a dumb idea, you'd probably get beat up a little bit, but you've got the ability to innovate at every level in the chain of command. And I think that is bred in us, to where it's like, we've got a problem. We don't really have anything to mitigate that problem. Let's figure it out. Let's build it.
Yes.
And so, and I think that is, like I said, the best thing that we've got going for us in the SEAL teams is that culture to always do that at any level.
Yes.
And when I'm looking out and I say, hey, I'm looking for edge technology, Eric, I'm not looking for, okay, here's the products on the market. I'm looking for this. I'm looking for what's being built. And how do we grab that before anybody else does? And how do we implement that? How do we become part of that solution?
Yes.
And so I'm not looking at the subscription list. I'm looking, when I say edge technology, I'm talking edge technology on things that people are doing some crazy stuff with that we're going to innovate with and grow with. And so, which is key. And any client of ours, like, that's what you want. You want somebody that literally has the passion to be the best at everything that they're doing to keep your organization safe. That's a fire and forget. Now I can concentrate on the business aspect of this. I know we're going to be fine on the security aspect. And so that's where I think that military piece comes from, I've never been any different, since the first time I hit the surf till now. Never been any different.
Nate, I don't think you've been different since the first time you hit the planet. You are truly you, my friend, and I'm grateful for that.
Eric, one of the things that he says quite a bit, and he says this to the staff a lot, and I got to commend him on it, which is the mission first and the troops are a close second. And it's a constant. We call him Circus. It's his nickname, right? Well, obviously we explained that to you earlier. So it
was off camera. That was an off camera conversation. Off camera.
That's what I call a circusism, right? It's a key phrase. And when he says it, you'll see people feel and gravitate towards his leadership.
Yes.
In the security environment, because you can't exactly, if you're wrong in security, which we have had people that are wrong, right, in the security world, that worked for us. They did something that wasn't the brightest or the smartest, and it goes against the mission. But when he says that, that's one of the key things that I've taken away from him constantly, is because that's the mission first. But the troops are a close second.
And without the mission, we're not here. we're not together.
Yeah,
we're not doing anything.
For sure.
And so it has to. And then how do I support that as a leader to make sure that that mission is accomplished?
Yes.
Come hell or high water at the end of the day, right? And so that's what I think is important in our leadership.
We are so grateful to have you gentlemen and your organization as our official partner, and I am hopeful that this will resonate at multiple levels with our audience. And so as we get to the last section here, let's get the looking glass into the future. A couple of questions here. Looking ahead, and you touched on it a little bit about the evolution of security, the evolution of threat vectors and all of that, but looking ahead, what new threat vectors are emerging? If you can just put a pin on that as we close, what new threat vectors are emerging that the industry isn't quite yet talking about? Don't give away your secret sauce, but give us a little teaser on that, and I'll start with you, Steve.
I think the threats are going to come multi-domain, same adversary, but multi-domain. So one of the key things that, whether it's from a law enforcement or military or security industry perspective, that is concerning is we're no longer looking at someone just attacking someone. We've seen the evolution through 9/11,
yes,
through the last 24 years. We've seen the evolution of, we saw it October of 2 years ago, right? Multi-domain, multi-level. I think that that's my biggest concern as far as 2026, 2027 goes, is we're no longer looking at singular threat matrix, singular threat vectors. We're looking at this multi-domain piece of security where we have to be able to not only respond from a hazardous material perspective, we have to be able to indicate and understand what those threats are at a level where if you're not first, if you're not there, if you're not analyzing, you're going to be late. And then it's going to be cleanup and reaction. So that's what concerns me. What also concerns me is the fact that we're living in a day and age where disinformation is the greatest threat to humanity.
Wow.
Right?
Yeah.
Where singly starting threat vector is the disinformation threat. That is the greatest threat to humanity, businesses, corporations every day. When somebody can come out and manufacture deep fake information that drives a stock price down, we know we have a connection problem, right? So I think that those are, I would say, disinformation growing into avenues of now AI-based technology, deep fakes, things like that. The other side is really that component of that multi-domain threat actor coming at both hacking, cyber, physical, targeted attack, things like that, all converging into one instance.
Nate, I want to take a small shift, but it's part of the same line of thinking, I think. Based on that, from your view, what would you say to CEOs, researchers, and hospital leaders listening today? If you could speak directly to them, which you are,
Absolutely,
and we'll be doing more of, what steps do they need to take right now to begin to think about how they better protect their people, assets, and, as you said earlier, their innovations?
I think understanding what the people are doing day in and day out. A lot of C-suites are not even on site of the employees. Sometimes they are, sometimes they aren't. I think I would start out with a survey, first and foremost, to figure out how your people are thinking. And then that's on the personal effects of what they think that security should be. And then I would do a risk assessment, first and foremost, a risk assessment. A lot of times it's a compliance, you have to, but I would do a risk assessment just to see where I'm at. And that's everybody loves dashboards. Everybody loves, data. We will give that to you through a risk assessment and say, listen, this is where I think you are. This is where I think you're deficient on, or you're good to go. Either way, somebody sees that. And that's liability taken off your plate to have a company come in and do a risk assessment on a security piece. And I would do it annually to once every 2 years, depending on the industry. It could be more frequent than that. So I think that's the first thing I would do is find out, what I have by an outside source, a professional, whether it's, just a risk assessment to figure out what I have, and then come up with a plan to figure out if there is a problem set and how am I going to mitigate that problem set.
Nate, did I hear you say risk assessment?
Yes.
More than one time. More than one time.
Yes.
Risk assessment.
Absolutely.
I love it. Thank you. Thank you. And last question for you, Steve. Welcome to Texas, man. Welcome to Texas. We're so glad to have you. What excites you most? You mentioned a little bit of it earlier, but what excites you most about our ecosystem and your unique presence as our official partner?
Well, you're fun to hang out with, Eric.
Thank you.
I think that you guys are spearheading innovation, and the only thing that I would say different is when is Bio North America getting started, because I think you guys are really thinking about things. You are the first industry individual that I have seen drive the conversation around what we're talking about.
Yes.
And you don't even come from our world.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you get it.
Bio North Texas, man. We think differently. It's
I'll tell
different
you,
here in Texas.
Move to Texas.
Yeah. 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 Steve, thank you, brother.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here.
Pleasure.
Thank you for being here. Nate, thank
Eric,
you for being here.
pleasure.
And I hope not to see you in a hot. No, I'm just kidding. I'm kidding. Thank you for being here, brother. It is truly an honor. Thank you so much. Thank you. Again, thank you to Steve and Nate. Thank you both for sharing your expertise and for the work the North Group is doing to protect innovation across our region. Your leadership underscores why biosecurity is national security and why your role as the official security and risk intelligence partner of BioNTX is so vital to our ecosystem. And to our listeners, thank you for joining us on Inside Innovation. If you'd like to learn more about the North Group, explore Bio North Texas's membership or sponsorship opportunities, or just simply stay connected to upcoming events, simply scan the QR code on the screen or visit biontx.org. Until the next time, stay inspired, stay connected, keep building for the future right here in North Texas, but most of all, stay secure. Be well.